Om Shivaya, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. This is the first in a series. Initially, we will go through the sutras themselves, define the words, and give a short commentary on most of the sutras in terms of what it means. This will take a few webinars. Once that's happened, we'll go through the sutras again, comparing them to Gurudeva's teachings. Additionally, on the church website, we will make two files available as resources. One is the Yoga Sutras with the commentary, and the second is the definitions. So those of you who are interested can study the material, either review it after it's been presented, or even read it ahead of time. I've divided the sutras into groups of roughly 8 to 10 minutes of presentation, and then we'll stop for questions. Again, remember, in the question and answer session, there's no need to write your question. You simply indicate in the chat box that you have a question, and then we'll log on to you and give you a chance to state it in person. So here we go. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Patanjali was a Saivite Nada Siddha, circa 200 BCE, who codified the ancient yoga philosophy, which outlines the path to enlightenment through purification, control, and transcendence of the mind. His system is one of the 6 classical philosophical systems, darshanas, of Hinduism, and is known as Yoga Darshana. In English, it is simply called classical yoga. The first chapter is about the deepest forms of meditation, which are called samadhi. Verse 1. Now the exposition of yoga. Comment. In Hindu scripture, the earliest usage of the term yoga as applied to spiritual endeavor has the meaning of the control of the mind and senses. That is the sense in which the term yoga is used in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. In case I didn't make it clear, the comments are all written by me. They're not part of the sutras themselves. Verse 2. Yoga is the restraint of mental activities. You can see on this slide in the yellow area, we have some definitions. So that's the section for definitions. Chitta is mind, vritti is activities. So chitta vritti is mental activities. And the key word nirodha is to restrain or restraint. So yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the restraint of mental activities. Comments. Our minds are generally busy in one type of mental activity or another. We are remembering events from the past, thinking about current tasks, or theorizing about possible future events. The practices of yoga are designed to enable us to eliminate these mental activities altogether. Verse 3. Then awareness abides in itself. To define the English word awareness, we say awareness is a general term referring to the soul's ability to sense, see, or know, and to be conscious of this knowing. Swarupa is the Sanskrit word which we've translated as itself. So then awareness abides in Swarupa, or in itself. For some verses, we have multiple slides because we're defining multiple terms. So that's the case here. Drashtri. This is the term in the verse that is translated as awareness. Drashtri refers to awareness functioning as the witness consciousness of the soul, wherein it perceives the activities of the mind. The more common Sanskrit term for witness is sakshan. Comment. When mental activity is restrained, the soul's faculty that witnesses thoughts naturally turns in on itself, and it remains temporarily aware only of itself until thoughts again arise. So the key word there is temporarily. It can be a short temporary period or a longer one, but in either case, the thoughts do come back, and then awareness no longer resides in itself. Verse 4. At other times, awareness takes on the form of the activities. Comment. It is the nature of the witness consciousness of the soul that it not only observes mental activities, but also identifies with those activities. A simple example is the idea of experiencing happiness. We say, I am happy. Awareness has taken on the form of happiness. Verse 5. There are 5 types of mental activities, of which some are based on wrong cognition and others are not. Our definition, klishta klishta, which is 2 words combined, klishta and aklishta. So klishta means based on wrong cognition. Aklishta means it's not based on wrong cognition. So the Sanskrit puts the 2 together in the same word. And they're both related to the noun klesha, which refers to 5 specific forms of wrong cognition, which we'll look at in chapter 2. Comment. The 5 concepts referred to as wrong cognition have in common that they provide the cognitive and motivational framework to living a life enmeshed in the world and ignorant of one's spiritual nature. Verse 6. The word they refers to the 5 types of vrittis we were talking about before. It doesn't refer to the kleshas. They are correct knowledge, erroneous knowledge, fantasy, sleep, and memory. This 5-fold division of mental activities provides a useful categorization system for analyzing and subsequently restricting one's thoughts. Verse 7. Correct knowledge arises from perception, inference, and testimony. So pramana is the term for correct knowledge. Our comment. The first source of correct knowledge is that we can perceive something directly and correctly. For example, we see a building on fire. We're perceiving the fire. That's a correct perception. If it was a larger fire, it could be at a distance and we could perceive the smoke. We could infer that there's a fire. This is using inference to obtain correct knowledge. We could also meet someone we trust who tells us that there's a fire over there. We're getting knowledge based upon valid testimony, which is the third source. Verse 8. Erroneous knowledge is false knowledge, not based on what actually is. The term viparaya, erroneous knowledge. Comment. For example, in a dimly lit street, we see an object and think it is a snake when it is actually a rope. The object exists, but we have misinterpreted its nature. Verse 9. Fantasy derives from verbal statements relying upon a non-existent object. Vikalpa is the word here that's used for fantasy. Comment. If you have ever visited Disneyland, it has a separate realm called Fantasyland, featuring characters such as Mickey Mouse and Tinkerbell, who are pure make-believe. They are non-existent. Verse 10. Sleep is the activity supported by the presented idea of nothingness. So we have abhava, nothingness, nidra, sleep, and for presented idea, pratyaya. And a little comment on pratyaya because it's used in a number of verses. The term pratyaya denotes any content of consciousness and is thus more comprehensive than the 5 types of mental activities, vritti, or the higher intuitions, prajna. Both these mental phenomena are in fact presented ideas which are continuously perceived by the transcendental, Purusha. Comment. This verse is of course referring to deep sleep or dreamless sleep and what is experienced in it. The last of the 5 categories, verse 11, gives us memory. Memory is not forgetting experienced objects. So memory is a translation of smriti. And as a comment, as many mental activities, vrittis, are the nature of memory, this is an important category to learn to identify and restrain. As you can tell from our graphic, this is our first opportunity to ask a question. For those of you not familiar with Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is probably most everybody, this first round of going through the verses is clearly not going to enable you to understand all of it in a comprehensive way, but it's an introduction to the concepts. And therefore the idea is make sure you understand what the general concept is that's being presented. And if you don't, you feel free to ask a question. So we're open to questions. No one has a question. Okay, we'll move on then. Verse 12. The restraint of these activities is achieved through practice and dispassion. So restraint of these activities is talking about the vrittis, the mental activities, the 5 categories of them. The 5 categories of activities are all restrained, all 5, in 2 ways, through practice and dispassion. Dispassion means freedom from passion. Practice is abhyasa, and dispassion is vairagya. Comment. If a question were to be asked, how do we make progress in restraining these 5 activities? A common answer, and one you've heard me give often in Gurudeva's teachings, is practice. This verse is pointing out that in addition to practice, the other important component is dispassion. In other words, the reason many of these mental activities are occurring is because of our attraction towards someone or something. So we need to control the tendency of the mind to be attracted to people or external objects, events. Verse 13, defining practice. Practice is the exertion to achieve steadiness in the state of restraint. Comment. The verse is defining what we're trying to do. The point of yoga is to sit with a controlled mind without losing control. You want to achieve steadiness. Practice is the effort to achieve that. In other words, we want to restraint to last for some time, not to just be for 5 seconds and then go away, and be for 1 second and go away. We want it to be steady. Steady in the state of restraint is the idea. Verse 14. This practice becomes firmly rooted when it is cultivated properly and uninterruptedly for a long time. So properly, satkara, continuously, uninterruptedly, nairantarya. Comment. This verse is stating that we will be successful if we do the practice correctly and consistently for long periods of time. It is not a quick process, but rather takes time. So that, of course, is something we say a lot in talking about Gurudeva's teachings, is this is a slow process. We need to work at it slowly and steadily in the proper way, and then results do occur gradually. Verse 15. Dispassion can be recognized to have been mastered by those who have no desire for what is seen or heard about. Comment. Progress in yoga is not possible if our mind is constantly externalized by objects or people to whom it is strongly attracted, whether actually seen or simply heard about. Some commentators consider what is heard to mean what is described in Scripture, such as the heavenly worlds. So it could mean either one, what someone tells you about or what is described in Scripture. Verse 16. The non-thirsting for the gunas, which arises when the Purusha realizes its own nature, is the supreme state of dispassion. So here we're starting to get some more terms. Purusha, the spirit that dwells in the body. In the Sankhya and Yoga systems, Purusha is one of two supreme beginningless realities, spirit and matter, Purusha and Prakriti, the male and female principles. It is the quiescent, unmanifest, pure consciousness, contrasted with Prakriti, the manifesting primal nature from which the cosmos unfolds. Prakriti, definition, primary matter, nature. In the 25 Tattva, Sankhya, and Yoga system, which concerns itself only with the tangible spectrum of creation, Prakriti or Pradhana is one of two supreme beginningless realities, matter and spirit, Prakriti and Purusha, female and male principles. Prakriti is the manifesting aspect as contrasted with the quiescent, unmanifest Purusha, which is pure consciousness. So said simply, in Patanjali, the word for soul is Purusha, and the word for the world is Prakriti. So the Purusha, soul, is perceiving the world, Prakriti. Next word to define is gunas, qualities. Metaphysically, the gunas are fundamental cosmic qualities of nature. The three gunas are tamas, inertia, density, the force of contraction, resistance, and dissolution. Rajas, stimulative restlessness, activity, the expansive energy of growth and movement. And sattva, quiescence, rarefied, translucent, pervasive, reflecting the light of pure consciousness. And one more definition for this verse 16, vairagya, dispassion, aversion. Freedom from passion, distaste or disgust for worldliness because of spiritual awakening. So comment, in our definition of vairagya, the second sentence defines it well in terms of the verse. The second sentence says, distaste or disgust for worldliness because of spiritual awakening. So that's what the verse is talking about, that very point. When the Purusha realizes its own nature, causes supreme dispassion. So the idea is that when we perceive the Purusha, it's much more interesting and fulfilling than Prakriti. So our tendency to look outward for fulfillment is greatly reduced because we've seen something that's inside, we've seen the Purusha. So it's a natural dropping in attachment and attraction because of perceiving the Purusha. So when the Purusha realizes its own nature, it's the supreme state of dispassion. This is called paravairagya, the supreme state of dispassion. So the term isn't there in the verse because vairagya is referred to with tat, but it's there by implication. Param, or supreme, tat, vairagya. So that was lots of definitions. Oh, we have our second chance. 4 questions. Do we have any brave souls to ask some questions? Okay, on my screen I don't see any questions. So we'll move on.
Let me just ask for a quick test.
Okay.
Om Shivaya, everyone. If you can just, one of you type something in the chat window just to confirm that it's still working. I may have inadvertently turned something off.
There it is. Yeah, it's working. Okay. Everybody's in samadhi already. Okay. Yes, we're working.
Did they send something to you
I have
specifically?
about, I see about 8 responses from different people.
Okay, they must have sent it to you privately. I didn't see anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, they need to send it to all participants, right?
Yes, so that we can all see.
Okay. So let's ask one more time. If anyone has a question, You can type your name, and you can just say, I have a question in the chat window, and you need to send it to all participants. Don't send it to me. One last time. Yes, I can see the word here privately, right?
Right.
Okay, nothing's coming into all participants, so we carry on. Verse 17. Samadhi, remember that's the most advanced state of meditation, samadhi. I guess it's going to explain that in the definition. Samadhi that is accompanied by vitarka, vichara, ananda, or asmita is called samprajñata. I think you're still on audio, Sarvanaswami.
Okay, I'll turn it off here.
Yeah. Samadhi that is accompanied by vitarka, vichara, ananda, or asmita is called samprajñata. So samadhi, we're familiar with Gurudeva's use of the term samadhi. Ecstasy, which means standing within oneself. Sameness, contemplation, union, wholeness, completion, accomplishment. Samadhi is the state of true yoga in which the meditator and the object of meditation are one. Comment. In ordinary perception, the subject and the object are always distinct. The distinguishing factor of the perspective of samadhi is that the experiential identification is the experiential identification of the subject and object. So, for example, normally when we look at another person, we have the concept I'm here and the other person's over there. But if we were to feel we were the other person, that would be a form of samadhi. Introducing some terms. Literal meanings of the four terms are vitarka, reasoning, vichara, cognition, ananda, bliss, asmita, I amness. And then for the English word cognition, to make sure we're clear on it, knowing perception. Knowledge reached through intuitive, superconscious faculties rather than through intellect alone. Verse 18. The other, amsa asamprajñata samadhi, follows the former by the practice of the presented idea of cessation of these and has only samskars as residuum. So if anyone understands that, they get an A+. Virama, cessation, termination, end. See what my comment is. Comment. In these two verses, Patanjali is introducing the focus of the chapter, which is on samadhi. Samadhi is the ultimate goal of the practice of yoga, the highest attainment. Here he is introducing samadhi in a simple way by giving us two kinds. More information is given later on in the chapter. So we have two kinds of samadhi, samprajñata and asamprajñata, that we've been given. And we have a word, samskaras. So we want to define samskara. These definitions, by the way, are almost all from our own lexicon, which is online, Himalayan Academy Lexicon Online, I call it, HALO, Himalayan Academy Lexicon Online, provides almost all the information we need to understand these terms. Samskara, impression, activator, sanctification, preparation. The number one, so there's two meanings of samskara. Number one, the imprints left on the subconscious mind by experience from this or previous lives, which then color all of life, one's nature, responses, states of mind, etc. So notice, somehow even the experience of previous lives resides within us as a type of samskara, not just the experiences of this life. So we're always the sum total, as Gurudeva says. He likes to say we're a sum total. You don't have to know your past lives. The sum total of them all is within you right now. You are your past lives and your present life. Number two, a sacrament or rite done to mark a significant transition of life. These make deep and positive impressions on the mind of the recipient. So that's like namakarana samskara. It's the second meaning of the word. So it's the relationship between the two is a sacrament, such as namakarana samskara, is purposefully putting a strong religious impression in the mind at a significant point in one's life. Key psychological point in one's life, we're putting a religious impression in the mind. So it's a specific meaning of the word samskara. So comment, back to the verse, in the higher states of subprajñata samadhi, there's an awareness of the gradual inhibition of all presented ideas. Upon full restriction of all presented ideas, samprajñata samadhi becomes asamprajñata samadhi. There's nothing there except awareness. That's what that is saying. When we've managed to cease everything, the only thing that's there is the witness. It's not witnessing anything. There's no presented ideas. Verse 19. You find this one interesting. See if I can pronounce that word. The samadhi of prakriti layanas and videhas is due to the presented idea of becoming. So videha is a disincarnate state. Prakriti layana is merger into prakriti, and bhava is becoming. So this verse, what it means is describing the samadhi of yogis who have opted for attainments rather than renunciation. They do not achieve asamprajñata samadhi. So comparing verses 18 and 19, it can be seen that opting for attainments is found in the phrase bhava pratyaya, presented idea of becoming, whereas attainment of asamprajñata samadhi has the phrase virama pratyaya, presented idea of cessation. So it's saying that you can end up with powers. You can develop your samadhi, but if you don't renounce everything that develops, if you're attached, then you end up with powers, then you don't reach the highest state. Verse 20. So this is the regular kind of samadhi that we're striving for. The samadhi of the others is preceded by faith, energy, mindfulness, samprajñata samadhi, and wisdom. So Shraddha is faith, Virya is energy, and Smriti is mindfulness. So that's saying what it's clear on. The qualities of faith, energy, and mindfulness can lead to samprajñata samadhi and wisdom, which can then lead to asamprajñata samadhi. So that's the path that we're following, the normal path. We're not trying for powers. Verse 21. This samadhi is near to him who is extremely passionate about his practice of yoga. So tivra, extremely, samvega, passionate. Comments. In other words, your yoga practice has to be important. It doesn't work if, for example, it is the 6th out of 7 priorities in your lives. First we have to do this, then this, then this, then this, and then we do our yoga. It has to be a top priority. So we have to be very interested in it, to paraphrase it. Verse 22. Whether this passionateness generates practice that is modest, medium, or intense also makes a difference. Comment. In other words, we need the interest, we need the priority, but the amount of time we put into our practice also is a variable. The more time we're able to put in, then the more progress we'll make toward samadhi. So that, of course, is an idea Gurudeva stresses a lot. Progress relates directly to the amount of practice, and we're only consistent in our practice when it's a high priority. Or samadhi is near through devotion to Ishvara. So Ishvara is Patanjali's word for personal God, supreme or personal God. In Saivism, it means Shiva as a person. We call that Parameshvara. So this is the generalized form of Parameshvara is Ishvara, personal God. So this is saying samadhi is near through devotion to Ishvara. Comment. Swami Hariharananda, a modern commentator on the Yoga Sutras, gives this explanation. What is meant is that instead of taking up other objects of meditation, if the aspirant takes to the practice of devotion to God from the very beginning, samadhi is easily attained. Another comment. This verse refers to the practice of Kriya Yoga. This is my comment, which is presented in chapter 2. Kriya Yoga has 3 practices, which are austerity, self-study, and devotion to Ishvara. Austerity purifies. Self-study gives communion with one's chosen deity. And through devotion to Ishvara, samadhi is attained. This is a part of Patanjali's yoga you don't find stressed in whenever it's presented in a Western setting, devotion to Ishvara, because it brings up the concept of religion in a very strong way. Well, who is Ishvara? And for Ishvara to be Ishvara, you have to have a Hindu point of view. But Patanjali is very much, what we would call a monistic theist. He's stressing devotion to Ishvara, and he's also stressing attaining the highest form of samadhi through meditation. So this theism is devotion to personal God, helps achieve inner meditation. So it's very much an idea of Saiva Siddhanta. Then we get some description of who Ishvara is. So Ishvara is a special Purusha, verse 24, because he is unaffected by the kleshas, ripening karma and stored karma. That's three things. Read it again. Ishvara is a special Purusha because he is unaffected by the kleshas, ripening karma, and stored karma. So the kleshas, remember, are the five forms of wrong cognition which bind us. So he bind us to the world, bind us to prakriti. So he's free of all of that. And he doesn't have either kind of karma that's currently ripening or being experienced, or karma that's sitting there to be experienced in the future. He doesn't have that either. So he is free of kleshas and karmas, which of course is the goal. But he's always been free of them. See what I say? Right, I just kind of explained what I said. It's good. So verse 25, and Ishvara, the seed of omniscience, knowing everything. The seed of omniscience is unsurpassed. So this is a further distinction, which is related to knowledge. The last one was related to karma and klesha. This is related to knowledge. Whereas the ordinary Purusha is in the process of increasing its knowledge, Ishvara is in the state of knowing everything. Sarva Jnana, knowing everything. Verse 26. Continuous throughout time, Ishvara was also the guru of those who lived earlier. Comment. This verse is pointing out that the original source of knowledge concerning yoga is Ishvara, not a human being. One of the common representations of Ishvara as teacher is the Murti of Dakshinamurti, in which Lord Shiva is depicted sitting under a banyan tree, silently teaching 4 rishis at his feet. So the original knowledge of yoga came from Ishvara, or God. Okay. Try again for questions. So if you have a question, just say you do and send it to all participants. Okay, don't see any questions. Verse 27. The word designating him is the pranava. So pranava literally means humming. Stands for the mantra Om, denoting God as the primal sound. So the word or the sound designating Ishvara is Om. That's what it's telling us. The mantra Om should be repeated while contemplating on its meaning. So what is its meaning? Well, there isn't just one meaning. When we look at Hindu scripture, there's a number of meanings for Om, so you could choose any meaning you want in terms of Patanjali's approach. The one I found was Mandukya Upanishad. Om stands for the whole world and its parts, including past, present, and future. Verse 29, Thence follows the attainment of inward mindedness and also the disappearance of the obstacles. So it introverts us. That's why it's a basic form of meditation, chanting Om in our 10-minute a day vigil, which we've designed for teenagers. They don't meditate, they chant Om. But it does the same thing. It takes you within when you chant it according to the count and the vibration. So it's the attainment of inward mindedness is one of the two goals of chanting Om, and disappearance of the obstacles. The obstacles will be talked about in a minute. So it's one way of overcoming the obstacles to meditation. My comment says, the simple practice of chanting Om takes one into higher states of consciousness. Being in a higher state, many of the obstacles mentioned in the next verse are not present. In other words, when we're not inspired about meditation, it means we're not in a higher state of consciousness. We're in an ordinary state or a subordinary state of consciousness. We need to uplift our consciousness. Mugam has a question. Yes.
Yes, it seems there were some questions being asked, Bodhinatha, but they were addressed to all attendees, which means we were not seeing them.
Aha. Instead of all participants. Okay.
So whoever
they need to go. Okay, yeah, all participants is the right one, right?
Yes.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so you can sort that out.
Yes. Whoever had a question, please type again that you have a question, and in the Send To menu, choose all participants, please. Okay, I see Tejas Sinha is typing, so I will activate him first.
Om Shivaya.
Om Shivaya, there you are.
Hello, Satguru. Namaskaram.
Namaskaram.
My questions are, first, concerning sleep. I saw earlier that there was a mention of sleep being absorption in nothingness. So if you would explain that a little bit further for me, I would appreciate it. And also the mention of bliss, Ananda. I'm wondering, what is Ananda? Is that a form in Prakriti, or is it something that arises when Purusha turns in on itself? Thank you. Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya. Well, to me, the sleep is easiestly thought about in the context of meditation. If you're meditating and you fall asleep, which can happen, usually it's not for too long, that's the type of sleep that would appear as a nothingness. You've lost your conscious control. So you're not alert, so it's a type of mental activity. It's not pure awareness, but it's a mental activity in which there's no motion. So it's nothingness in the sense of motion. There's no content. In dreamless sleep, there's no content, but there's something there still. There's a mental activity. You're not being aware of itself. You're in a mental activity, but it has no content. So nothing means no content. Whereas the others are content. Memory is content. What were you remembering? You can say what it was. What were you thinking about? What was this? Everything else has content except sleep. In terms of bliss, it's a very good question. Is he talking about bliss as an aspect of the soul or bliss as an aspect of Prakriti? And he doesn't say. So I haven't developed the point. And it's something to be in his terms, it's something that you need to get rid of. So therefore, it must be something to do with prakriti, but I didn't say because he doesn't say. So I try not to, expound something that's not really there. So he's vague. So thank you very much for the questions.
Om Shivaya, thank you.
Okay, after this, I'm going to activate Mugam next, and then Gajanan after that.
Shivaya.
Mugam, you should now see a video icon. You can turn on your video if you have it.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Bodhinatha. Nice to see you.
Yes, there you are.
Just want to know that with these explanations, that at the first line we get it only on an intellectual base, and on what line of chakra or feeling or understanding we must be to be in line with the Guru, so we can understand it on a deeper level, on the feeling level, not only on the mind understanding and intellectually processing it, but to be in what chakra and how we function, so we can get the inner understanding, so we can continue to evolve within ourselves in a day-to-day life.
Well, that's the fourth chakra of cognition, Anahata chakra in Sanskrit. That's when we transcend reason. As Gurudeva says, superconsciousness does not conflict with reason, but it's using another faculty. So that's the fourth chakra. And the fourth chakra is kind of similar to reason, but is definitive. In other words, reason, you're never quite sure if you're right. Whereas the fourth chakra, it's reasonable, but you know it's right. So that's the difference. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Om Namah Shivaya.
Is that it, Mugam, for now?
Yes, I just want to know how do we know if we are functioning in the right chakra?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I'll move on to the next question. Okay, Gajanan, your video is activated.
Om Namah Shivaya.
This is Danny. He has a question. Hi, about the samadhi. If you achieve the state of samadhi in your past life, does that make it easier in your present life to achieve?
Okay, I couldn't quite hear the question distinctly. Can you be closer to the microphone and don't turn away from it?
Yeah, if you achieve the state of samadhi in your past life, is it possible that will allow you to achieve it easier in your present life?
What was the last few words? Achieve the which?
Achieve it easier.
Samadhi.
Achieve samadhi easier in your present life. Will it make it easier?
Make your present life easier?
If Guruji, if you have achieved samadhi in a past life.
Oh, I say yes. Will that make it easier? Definitely. Yeah, that's part of samskaras coming forward, that and you can see it in astrology too. Vedic astrology will mention that on occasion, that you're carrying forward what you achieved in your past life during certain astrological periods. So yes, it shows up. Gurudeva explains that in that you go through the beginning stages again, but you do them very quickly. It would be like in school, going through the first 6 grades of school taking 1 month instead of 1 year. You know, you'd be going through the same material, but you would do it extremely quickly, as if you had done it. So definitely it makes it easier, and that is the Hindu point of view, is that everything we attain, be it in yoga or other aspects of life, carries forward, and we pick up on it in a future life. Thank you for such a good question.
Thank you. Om Shiva.
Okay, do we have any other questions pending? Okay, we'll just do a couple more verses. We're trying to keep the webinar to about an hour. But I know you're all sitting there on the edge of your chairs wondering what the obstacles are, and wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if I didn't tell you. Verse 30, sickness, apathy, doubt, carelessness, laziness, sensual indulgence, false perspective, non-attainment of the stages of yoga, and instability in holding them are all distractions to the mind and are the obstacles. So for definitions, we have vikepa, distractions, and antaraya, obstacles. Comments. The obstacles tend to be present when an individual is uninspired about his or her yoga practice. The verses coming up give 8 different practices for uplifting oneself to a higher state of consciousness in which the obstacles naturally fall away. Sorrow, dejection, trembling limbs, and irregular inhalation and exhalation accompany these distractions. This verse points out that being in an uninspired state not only affects one emotionally and mentally in a negative way, but physically as well. Why is that? Because we're not compartmentalized. Our emotions, our thoughts, and our body are a one unit, and so they all respond together, either positively or negatively. So that's a good point to stop. And as I say, these are the obstacles and the distractions that accompany them. And then the verses we'll pick up on next time give us 8 ways of overcoming them. And they all involve uplifting ourselves, lifting our energy, uplifting our spirit, getting re-inspired about our practice of yoga. So to summarize again, our general approach, this is a run through, and as we can tell by the lack of questions, everyone's shy to show that they don't understand everything, but you're not supposed to. This is an introduction to the terms, an introduction to the general idea. We want to go through it all so we have a sense of what the whole book contains before we go into any part of it in detail. So thank you very much for attending, and we'll have another session probably in 2 months. Om Namah Shivaya.